Welcome to my finishing shop. Today we're going to discuss how to store tung oil, how to revive some tung oil that's gotten gelled, and how to decant tung oil. One of the important features about tung oil is that it really loves oxygen, and it really doesn't matter where that oxygen is. Hopefully it is across a surface that's already been finished. But if a can is opened or with continual exposure of opening and shutting it and opening and shutting it, that exposure in the surface to oxygen over time really starts that oxidation process happening in the can. We don't really want that to occur. So if you're going to do short-term storage in your can for a project, we advise you to clean the rim of your container, apply the lid firmly, and then actually store it inverted. And what that does is it puts a fluid seal around the top of the can, and the can is never going to be perfectly sealed like it was coming from our facility, and therefore that little small crack in there has a tendency to create a vacuum and bring more air in. So if you invert it, that stops that. But let's say you're finished with your project and you've got a half a can left. What are you going to do for long-term storage? You have a couple of options. One is, they say you can leave it in here and keep it inverted, or if you really have a large portion of oxygen in your can, you might want to consider putting it in a smaller container. Any container will work as long as it has a tight-fitting lid. I love canning jars. We actually get salsa in these, and I save them because they're great finishing jars. Canning lids have a nice rubber tight seal on them. And basically what you would do, we're going to pretend that this is tung oil. We would just fill this off as close to the top as possible. We'd recap it, and then remember, we're going to properly label it, store it inverted. And although there's some oxygen in here, this will get consumed, and that's the end of it. There will be no more oxygen that will get to this container until you're ready to use it again. Another way of doing it, if you want to keep your material in your can, let's say you've got a quarter of a dead air space in the top. And I'm going to demonstrate this with the water. It's called just displacement. It's just simple kind of physics. And what you're doing is you're replacing that vacant space with something else, so it brings that surface back up. You can do it with these stones, clean stones, or you can do it with glass beads. Either one of them will work. So what you would do would be to just pour in the number of beads or stones required to bring the surface up to the top. And that way you can maintain keeping your material in the same can. And there, you've done the same thing by replacing that water volume. And you're all set. We've had even a call this morning. Someone had purchased some medium luster, and it was gelling in the can, and they wondered, could they use it? Did it have an expiration date on it? The only material that we manufacture that has an expiration date are our exterior products: exterior sealer, medium luster, and our spar varnish. And that's because of the additives that we put in the formulation that over time have a tendency to precipitate out. Everything else is perfectly usable as long as the material is fluid. But you can rescue it if it hasn't gone too long. So what we do in that instance is we're going to pretend that this is the portion of our can that is starting to gel. You would add some dicitrosol or some mineral spirits to it and let it sit for a period of time. Then you'd stir it to see if you could get it into solution again. And when it gels, it has a tendency to look somewhat like Jell-O, depending on how exposed it is. Let it sit for a while, let the mineral spirits kind of work its magic there. And I would be recording how much mineral spirits I put in, so you can have an idea that when you're done, what you're going to have for a luster or a solid content of oil. And then after a period of time, you'd simply pour it through some cheesecloth so that anything that did not go into solution would be caught in the cheesecloth, and the usable portion would be below. And again, you put it back into a jar, a small jar that fit the size or the volume of the material that you had remaining, not putting it back in the jar where it was already gelled. So for instance, at this point you probably have a sealer consistency or a low luster consistency out of medium, were you to dilute that with anywhere from 20 to 30% solvent. So that's how you would try to revive it. Sometimes it's doable, other times it's not. Sometimes you just have to replace the material. Great, well I hope that helps with all those questions about when can I use my tung oil, how do I save it, how do I repackage it, and how do I revive it. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you the next time.